Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. It's in there. It says right here, so by your words you shall be justified, and by your words you shall be condemned. At the judgment seat of Christ is not the place where you want to go, No. You don't want to do that. Oh, exactly. Take care of it now. Start cleaning out the garbage, right? How do we do this? We got a purpose in our heart. Yes, we do. So we can see in the world today all this stuff that's coming at us, being bombarded. And it's hard the Bible says to submit unto God, resist the devil. That we quote that scripture, resist the devil and he will flee. But we forget that one first part, submit unto God first. How do we submit? Where do we submit? In what part of our life do we submit to God? Huh?
All of it?
All of it. Our whole part. Every part of us. Mind,
Right.
body,
Yes.
and spirit, because it is all connected.
Right.
We can't just say, Lord, I submit my body into you. That don't work. Exactly, the mind is someplace else. Lord, when Christianity went to the Vikings, St. Patrick, St. Patty's Day, okay, he went to that part of the world and St. Patrick and started, he brought Christianity to the Vikings and to the Norsemen, and they were getting baptized by the hundreds, right? But when they got baptized, they would take and lift their sword up and out of the water. Their sword hand and their sword as they were going under. Lord, you can have everything but my right hand and my sword. In other words, Lord, you can have me, but I got to fight. Okay? I'm still going to, if that person looks at me cross-eyed, I'm going to get them with my sword. Okay, they wouldn't submit all 100%. And does God want 95% of us?
No.
Does God want 99.9% of us?
100%.
It's 100%. He wants our mind. But that's one part that, Lord, you can have everything, but my mind, that's kind of hard. And as we're thinking about that, and all of a sudden this thought comes through, and man, a cheeseburger sounds really good right now. Lord, I just thank and worship, I just praise you and I worship you for what you've done and how you've blessed me, and then all of a sudden a thought will come through, and I wonder what they're playing at the theater tonight. Or random thoughts. We're praying, going, Lord, I'm going to pray, and I'm going to seek your face. I'm going to make up my mind to do this. And did you feed the dog? Did you put out the cat? Did you turn off the coffee pot? What's going on? Distractions. The battle for the mind. All thoughts come at us from every direction. And pretty soon, man, we're like, oh, man, pizza. That sounds real. I'm hungry right now, actually. This sounds really good. And so we cut our prayers short, get in the car, and run to Little Caesars, get that, because we got $5 that's just burning a hole in our pocket. Then we go home, we scarf it down, and we ask God, heal my stomach of the indigestion, the heartburn that I have, please.
Right.
God says, well, if you would have lasted at least 20 minutes, you wouldn't have had that heartburn right now.
Right.
Then he's like, could you not tarry with me 1 hour? What was Peter's what was their problem?
Going to sleep.
Going to sleep. You know, they're trying to pray, and Satan's going, you know, go to sleep. Go to sleep, close your big bloodshot. And they're like, Jesus, oh Father, I thank you. How many of us have done that? How many of you pray while laying in bed at night? Because prayer is not on your mind. Sleep is on your mind at that moment. Even though the Bible does say to lay in your bed and think on the Lord.
Yes, thank you, Lord.
It does say that. To ponder on Him. And maybe you can build up some endurance.
Yes.
Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. Now we're going to get into the deep stuff. The battle for the mind. Ephesians chapter 4. Let's look at this. Start at verse 1. It says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord. Paul is talking, and he's a prisoner. He's in prison. That's why they call them prisoners. And what is the mental stability of those that are in prison? When they are confined, especially, it used to be back in the day that when a person was in prison, they were incarcerated in a small room and were not allowed to get out at all. And guess what? It didn't take long for them to go crazy.
Right.
It didn't, because when they're in solitary confinement for long periods of time, the mind starts to break. I read this book that was from my grandfather, and it was about a Catholic nun who the priest did things to her. And so she wouldn't talk. He put her in a room underneath the monastery for some 30 years. Until the bishop came and said, what's down there? Oh, that's just a storage room. He opened it up, and it opened up into this big room with cells on the side. He goes, open up all these rooms. What are these people doing down here? Whole families down there. They've lived there for generations. Well, he goes, what's that room, doctor? What's that last door? Oh, that's just a storage room. And he opened it. This is 30 years, actually it's 20 years later. This Catholic nun been in there for 20 years. And her clothes had disintegrated. She grew hair like an animal. Her claws were her fingernails were long. Okay? And she wrote this book. She wrote her story. It was a small story, small book. And she said that for a certain amount of time, she was praying. She prayed every morning. But one day she got she was in complete darkness, and her eyes got so used to the dark that she could tell when it was daytime, when it was nighttime, when it was winter, when it was summer. Her hearing became so acute that she made herself a needle out of a piece of bone, and she could throw it behind her and hear where it fell in the straw and go find it in the dark. All right, she made a sleeping mat out of her own hair. That's how much time she had. She made it, and they fed her once every 3 days. But one day she woke up and she said, something snapped in my mind and I wasn't human after that moment. She said, I was still conscious of God, but the human factor was gone. And when that bishop came after 20 years, she ran to the corner of the room and said, please don't hurt. Please don't hurt. It was instinct that had kicked in. But see, God, after he said, get her out of there, restore her. And God restored everything back to her.
Thank you, Lord.
Okay, he restored her mind, everything. Because she said, I knew God. My mind was still on God, but yet something had snapped. So the battle for the mind. The Ephesians chapter. So Paul here is in prison. Okay, he's a prisoner of the Lord. He's in prison. So Paul wasn't. He also had a battle for the mind. That's why he said, think on good things. Think on it. Force yourself to think. This lady that she goes, how can I change? How can I change the desires within my heart? How can I do this? How can I help fill this void within me? I said, think on good things. How can I get rid of the sadness and depression that's within me? You got to think. You got to force yourself to think on good things.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Think on the positive aspect. It's so easy, man. When we turn on the news, what do we see? Garbage. It's not even news. It's garbage.
Yes.
And what the church has become, what the Christians have become, is spiritual junkies.
Right.
Eating junk food. It's so easy. Oh, it tastes so good. But what happens to our bodies after we've been eating it for a long time? We become sick.
Right.
Well, the mind is no different. We think on this garbage. Oh, it tastes so sweet. It satisfies the flesh. But what does it do to us mentally or even spiritually? It breaks us down
Right. Thank you, Jesus.
to the point where we can't even think of anything good anymore.
Right.
Nothing positive.
Thank you, Jesus.
We look at a fellow Christian and we see negative. We don't see positive any longer. There's a problem.
There's a problem.
So the rest of this verse says, beseech you, brethren, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called, to walk worthy of it, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body, one Spirit, even as you are called in one hope of your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and the Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. He is writing this and saying this while in prison.
Thank you, Jesus.
Paul was incredible.
Thank you, Lord.
He's practicing what he's preaching here. Skip to verse 17. Moral standards. This is the title of this in this Bible. It says, this I say therefore, and testify of the Lord, that you henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind.
Right.
Don't walk like that. Don't. Purpose in your heart. Make a conscious decision not to partake at the king's table.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
Don't defile your minds. Don't defile your bodies with that stuff.
Thank you, Jesus.
Don't do it. Purpose within your heart.
Thank you, Lord.
Having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God. If we get to a point to where we can't feel God's presence any longer, who moved?
You did.
What happened? Take a look at how you're living your life, how you're thinking. What happened? Well, the devil has snuck in. He snuck in, and sometimes we don't even realize it. We're so used to this stuff. It's everywhere. Being alienated from God, from the life of God, through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling, have given themselves over to lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. Where did it start? Whatsoever a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That's why the battle for the mind, because the body follows the head. It does. It follows the head. Oh, we got to fight to keep our minds. We got to fight, and then we got to clean house.
Yes. Thank you, Lord.
Clean our houses. 'Cause, you know, if so be that you have heard him, you know, and see, this goes in, you know, all these five senses, what we see, what we hear, goes into our brains, goes into our thought life, and all of a sudden it comes out
Right,
out of
right.
the mouth, because all goes into here and comes right back out. And it doesn't take a whole lot.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's so how do we do this? You know, we can't set, you know, we can't shut ourselves behind closed doors, build walls. They've done that. Monasteries. But see, if we close ourselves behind, you know, build these brick walls up